Peter initially trained as a designer and goldsmith at the Birmingham School of Jewellery. After working as a lecturer and tutor, he developed a European funding and project management consultancy, which was launched in 1994. Then followed a return to education in 1997, when he was recruited to establish the Jewellery Industry Innovation Centre for the University of Central England. In 2002, he joined the Goldsmiths Company as its first director of technology and training. And he became its first director in 2011. On a more personal note, he's committed to lifelong learning. He says he considers life to be one long apprenticeship where you acquire and hone new skills and bring old ones to bear in creative ways. So please welcome Peter.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Goldsmiths Centre. And what I'd like to do, if I may, is to just take you on a little bit of a journey around where we are as an organisation, Goldsmiths Centre, our attitude towards the training and development of silversmithing skills, because that's part of my brief. And I'd also like to talk about some of the challenges which I think we face in this country. And let's not mistake the fact we're in a global marketplace as well now. So I think we need to look further than the UK. Just a little bit about myself. Thank you for that introduction. I thought I'd just show you what I looked like probably in about 1989 when I was sat in my workshop with my friend, who actually, funny enough, is married to Barbara Tipple now, and a jeweller and silversmith of some note himself. We didn't drink tea all of the time. We actually did some silversmithing. So I think it's always quite useful when you stand up in front of people to try and put some context around who you are and where you've come from. And I was amazed. I was very lucky. I went to the School of Jewellery at a time when we were blessed with a multitude of fantastic tutors, some of them coming in from industry, some of them who were working within the school already. And I really consider myself to have had a fantastic technical education. I come from a City and Guilds background, and then I did a HND. But actually, the thing that I was really, really amazed by was I won an internship as I finished my time at school, and I went to work for Edward Jones. I know somebody in the audience worked for Edward Jones as well, so it's quite interesting for me that despite the fact that I'd had an amazing technical education at the school, I think I learnt far more in the first hour that I was with Keith, the workshop manager at Edward Jones in the workshop there, than I'd learnt in the whole time when I was at school. Because I was working in a different way and they were working in different ways. And I'd like to come back to that point in just a little while. So just to explain a little bit about the centre. We are a charity. We're an independent charity, although we were established by the Goldsmiths Company. Gordon has already talked about the company and its role in supporting the development of contemporary silver here in the UK over the last 40 to 50 years. This is the physical manifestation in lots of ways of the company's desire to see our trade, our industry, continuing to grow and prosper as we go forward for the next, hopefully, 50 to 100 years. As a charity, we are primarily focused on the maintenance and development of the art of goldsmithing. And goldsmithing, as you'll all know, is a generic term which covers our craft. It's all aspects of what we do. From our perspective here, I think the uniqueness of this place is the fact that we have businesses working alongside what we're trying to do with education and training. And I think that is a unique offer. I'm not aware of anywhere else in this country that has the particular combination of things that we have going on here, and you know, from our perspective, we believe we're very much on a journey as an organisation. We can't solve all the challenges, we can't solve all the problems, but actually we're very lucky to have access to lots of people who help us to try at least to do that. So the centre has been open now for 4 years. When I bring visitors to the centre and they see what's going on here, they think that we're often a much more mature organisation than we are. And I guess one of the reasons that we feel a little bit like that is because we've got the Goldsmiths Company sitting behind us. We're 4 years old. I think in 2027 the Goldsmiths Company will be 700 years old in terms of its Royal Charter. So there's a degree of history underpinning what we're doing here, which perhaps makes us feel a little bit more mature than we are. We're very much in our diapers at the moment. For us, we believe that it's all about people. We believe that the audience is for the centre, and we see our audiences as being key, are really the future of everything that we do. And I've just got a couple of 3 images of some of the youngsters that we've had going through over the last 4 years. And I'll show you in a few moments some of the work that they've been doing as well. I think interesting for me, each year we've had a silversmith come out of our foundation programme and go on to an apprenticeship. The young lad who's in the middle has gone to Asprays. He's now training to be a polisher. For those of you who are making silver, you'll know that a polisher can make or break your work. So we're delighted that we've got young people actually coming through, taking on those kinds of trade skills in the way that they are. In this photo, we've got another smith working, funnily enough, for one of our audience, and training to be a silversmith. For a long time, when I arrived at the Goldsmiths Company, we weren't seeing apprenticeships in silversmithing. People were really, really busy, and the work that they were doing was very skillful. And actually, it was very difficult to get young silversmiths into workshops. And the company did a huge amount to try and encourage that, including funding those apprenticeships. For us here, we see our audiences being a mixed one. So our youngsters on the foundation programme, they come to us for nine months, an academic year, and they do a range of trade skills. We don't claim to offer a design course. It's not what we're doing, although they do design and they do drawing, because drawing and design are a fundamental part of making. But for us, we're not offering a design course. We're offering a course which is about developing those basic technical skills that enable a young person to pursue a career in our craft. If they ultimately become a designer as well, fantastic, that's their choice. But for us, we want to give them that baseline skill. The image that we have up here is of a slightly different audience, and it's the audience that's coming through at an undergraduate level. We find that as soon as we advertise anything to do with silversmithing skills and skills development, it sells out immediately, especially if we subsidise it. And that's one of the challenges. One of the good things as well, obviously. But for us, that audience of encouraging undergraduates who are going through their formative period as designers and makers to acquire basic hammering skills, basic skills that are, unfortunately do need to be taught. You can watch videos, and we do have a series of very good videos, if I can just do a bit of commando marketing there on those. But ultimately, having somebody teaching you, sitting with you, is the way that most of us learned. And ultimately, we find that the reaction that we have to any offer of skills training at an undergraduate level is that it's just desired. People want it. And the reason they want it is because of the changes within the education system. And that's not the fault of the education system itself or the people that teach our subject. It's the nature of what's gone in education, full stop. So it's important for us, I think, today in this conversation to make sure that we don't get into that kind of very negative spiral of trying to blame what's happening in education for what's wrong with skills training in our industry. What's wrong with skills training in our industry is that we do not value skills in this country. Our governments do not value skills, and they do not value the vocational route for our young people. If they did, the universities would be offering courses that taught 10 people a year in each year group. They don't, and therefore we're in the position that we are. I just love these photographs because it's like, this is a guy called John Need. Some of you will know him. He comes in. We get them hammering for 3 days. Andy, 3 days? 3 days. And then we show them how it's done on a spinning lathe, and they get really, really depressed about the whole thing. But again, you know, a lot of colleges have a spinning lathe sitting in the corner of the workshop. Nobody knows how to use it. Or if they do know how to use it, they end up teaching people bad habits rather than good habits. And I think we've got a huge challenge about what I call the non-virtuous circle of learning that's going on in our craft at the moment. We're recycling a lot of our young learners back in as interns and teachers. And actually, they're teaching people what they don't know rather than what they do know. And I think it's something that is a real challenge for us, and we have to face up to it. We have to understand that if you're taught by somebody who's got 40 years of experience, then you're going to learn something out of that process. I think we've got a real challenge with these huge class sizes of how do we encourage those young people to gain the skills before they try and teach them. Because ultimately, if you've been taught badly and then you teach somebody, you're just going to teach them exactly the same things that you've learned. And what do we do when we go to university or college? We aspire to the person who teaches us, don't we? It's just a natural thing. They become our role model. So what do we expect to get out of the kind of training and education that we're doing here? Well, this is a little piece of work that was done by one of the foundation kids. It's actually a fabricated silver box. So it's made up out of sheet. It's not a spinning. It's all handmade and enamelled. And there's a bit of bringing on, so assembly afterwards with the enamelling. And part of what we're doing here is trying to integrate different trade skills into different pieces that are being produced. Engraving. You know, we often laugh about the Hand Engravers Association, who wrote to the Goldsmiths Company and said, all hand engravers are dying out. We need an association to maintain us. We advertised an event at Goldsmiths Hall. We had about 60 people arrive for it. There were more engravers than anybody actually knew. In fact, I think there are more engravers than silversmiths. And they have continued to grow and prosper as an organisation. The kids do something, and this is all foundation work. So these are 16 to 19-year-olds. This is hand-scored, fabricated condiment sets. So these are folded. We all know there is nowhere to hide. If they're not right, although we have got quite a good polisher in the building, you know you can get caught out. And ultimately, we want to see our apprentices and young people producing work which is award-winning. You know, that's what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to get the young people that are working with us and the graduates that are working with us to aspire to be the best that they possibly can. And I make no bones, and I often get beaten up about esprit de corps and the idea that we should be special and we should aspire to be the best that we possibly can be. And our role here at the Goldsmiths Centre is very much to try and support that. I think the way the Goldsmiths Centre works, and this is a very good example of a piece that was produced here by a student who won an award, who then had the opportunity to come into a workshop in the Goldsmiths Centre and make that piece. Had the technical support and help of someone who's a fantastic craftsman and designer in their own right, and produced a piece which is frankly stunning. Includes modern technology and does everything, you know. And then we can put that alongside an apprentice piece. And I was interested in hearing about the Chinook. You know, these pieces are still being made, Gordon. We don't necessarily see them. They sit in a warehouse in Abu Dhabi or Bahrain or wherever they're sitting. These pieces are still being made, and we can still work at the highest level in this country in our craft. And our aspiration here at the centre is to make sure that we're still able to do that in the future. And I just wanted to flash this last image up because I think for me this is really epitomises what the centre's about. This is a piece by a guy called Ben Ryan, who was on our first postgraduate programme here. He'd spent 2 years at Bishopsland before he came to us, and had trained at Loughborough, I think. The reason I put this up here is that this is a technically very complex piece, and we did laugh because they are quite large, and any person trying to use them probably is going to develop a rather good set of biceps and triceps. But what was really great for us was that when he was making these, he was helped by one of our foundation trainees. And this thing of the right people doing the right things at the right time is a real theme for us. You know, we try to imagine, Gordon, you're talking about the creation of artisan silversmiths. We're trying to imagine here that people can be marketeers, they can be salespeople, they can be PR experts, they can be accountants, They can be all of these things, and they can be silversmiths. And actually, Cal Surprise, if you look at our trade, each one of our parts of our trade are individual skill-based sets. And we're asking people to be all of those things, plus a business manager. When we don't teach business management on degree courses, because if we did, we wouldn't actually teach any design at all. So I think, the challenge for us today is to start to understand how do we get the right people doing the right things at the right time, and how do we capture the skills and abilities that we have in our industry today that potentially will not be there in the future.
Just wonder if I can press you slightly on your diagnosis of the problems or difficulties you face. You mentioned, I wonder if you could just clarify, what do you see as the challenge of training provision today?
If you want to get somebody to teach, actually getting them out of the workshop is really challenging. And that in itself, I think, is a huge challenge for education. We don't have the kind of access to sessional lecturing that we had historically. So when I was at college 30 years ago, we had access to people who were coming in from industry all the time. We also have the issue of scale and the number of people in classes. And actually teaching practical skills to 40 people is very, very difficult. You cannot give someone the attention that they need. So I think there's a number of different issues. I think there's an issue around the quality of people that are available to teach, not because they're necessarily not good enough, but because they're not necessarily available if they are good enough. And I think there's an issue around the scale of what's going on in terms of student numbers.
Okay, nice. And are you doing anything specific at the Goldsmith Centre to address either of those problems?
We are. I think we are. One of the areas that we're very keen to explore going forward is how do we support the development of new teaching staff within the HE sector. It's something that's come up. We did a long piece of work last year on whether we should be offering a degree course here, and went a long way down the route of almost getting to the decision to do so. I think ultimately it's not our role, but actually working with partners within the HE sector to maybe support the development of some young makers, to give them additional skills, to enable them to teach effectively, I think is something that we would like to do. What we're doing here is we designed a workshop where we can only have 10 people in it. So regardless of how hard my trustees want to push me to have 30 people in a class, I can't do it, unless they buy me a new building, which obviously we wouldn't want anyway. Far too much like hard work. But I think just the design of this building itself sets the tone of what we're trying to achieve here.
Okay, thank you.
Artisan, I just wonder if we've got an identity problem, because various people give us labels. Is it a craft? Is it a trade? Is it an industry? Are we studio silversmiths, artisan silversmiths, designer makers, designer silversmiths? I just wonder if you've got any comment on that, Peter. We all need a label, but I just wonder, artisan is very, very specific, and I completely understand why it's there. But could you shed any light on it? People like Rosemary Ramsden Wallace, who calls us all various different things from the company. I think we need to be united in knowing who we are.
Surely we should all be silversmiths, Grant, I would have said. I think that the clue's in the name, isn't it? As soon as you start putting labels on anything, you disengage a whole range of audience from that particular debate. For me, we're silversmiths, we're goldsmiths. We make things in precious metal. If you're an artisan, well, we can be an artisan stonemason or we can be an artisan baker. I'm not convinced personally that using a label that says artisan is the right label for silversmithing. I think we make things, I think we design beautiful things, and I'm quite comfortable with the term silversmith, frankly.
Yeah, just to sort of add on to Grant's point there was a kind of distinction that you kind of covered in your talk just there, which was about trade skills and artisan skills. I mean,
I don't personally see any difference.
Okay.
What I see is that it takes a long time to gain those skills.
Yeah.
And most people who are artisans are so busy trying desperately to earn a living. The idea that you're going to sit and learn to score boxes up 10 a week for 10 years to get to the point where you're a box maker just isn't going to happen today in the same way. So for me, I don't see any difference. I think the challenge is to gain those skills.
Yeah.
And how do we support people to acquire those skills? And at what points in their career do we support people to acquire those skills? So for me, when you see an undergraduate here doing a hammer workshop, they'll take that skill away with them. And actually, hopefully, they'll be using it in their jewellery or they'll be using it in their smithing. And actually, it's a basic skill. But if you're not taught it right to begin with, you're just going to hammer it, aren't you? It's
Gordon.
It's a very interesting point. The whole, when I first wrote the title of the dissertation, I was very careful to choose the word artisan because it encompassed for me not just somebody who is a maker, but it's somebody who has to think about what they're going to make, design it, worry about the market, where they're going to sell it, actually go ahead and sell it, market it, and do all of these this multitude of jobs. And I set myself the difficulty of that task. I certainly didn't do creating the manufacturing silversmith. That would have been just, in effect, a piece of cake. When I first went to Edinburgh, I actually started with creating the artisan jeweller and silversmith, and they went, whoa, forget the jewellery trade, it's too big. Think about a part of the silversmithing industry, so we chose that. And the problem with a PhD dissertation is it's only 100,000 words. So when you've got so few to actually work with, you have to bring it down to a certain level. So this is why I chose the word artisan. And I have to say, I still haven't defined what that word means. And I'm still struggling with it. I've written screeds about it, and I am none the wiser. So I think you may be vaguely interested in a year or two's time to read what I define as an artisan, but it's a very, very difficult one to define.
Okay, thank you. Maybe time for just one last quickie, if anyone is...
Peter, you spoke about the right people doing the right things at the right time in a business. Sorry. There we go. And I absolutely understand what you're saying, that there are a number of, for want of a better word, designer makers in the room. And I think we would all agree that there's a huge challenge in doing that. What might that look like for you in the context of individual designer makers?
I think it's not necessarily what it looks like for me. I think it's what organisations like this could do to support that process differently, but it does require people to change mindset. We're educating a whole generation, and have been for a while now, of people who believe that the outcome of their degree is to become a self-employed designer maker. And by default, that constrains their creativity. It can't do anything else because they've got to earn a living. One way or another, they're either going to have another job, or they're going to have to do what needs to be done to make the money. So for me, I think part of the challenge for us over the next 5 to 10 years, if we're looking ahead, is how do we start to put in place the kinds of services that those designer makers need to take away the bits that are not the bits that they're good at. Because if they were good at those bits, they'd be doing those and earning lots of money out of them. So for me, it's about how does an organisation like this create structures which support people to be creative, to make the work that they're passionate about making, and also to have the opportunity to sell it. Because ultimately, the amount of stuff that lives in the bottom of wardrobes and under beds between shows, for me, is a tragedy. It's just stock sitting there doing nothing. And actually, ultimately, the creation is fantastic, and if you've got a trust fund, brilliant. But if you haven't got a trust fund, most of us have to earn a living. It's just the way the world is. So for me, I think it's about organisations like the Centre and others looking at how they take away some of the bits that are the wrong things at the wrong time, done by the wrong people. And I include in that some of the making skills as well.